Hey YouTubers, good morning, Robb. Guys, today we have a pretty cool book review. We're going to be reviewing The Alpha Strategy. You know, there's a lot of people that think, a lot of smart people, a lot more smarter than I am, think we may be getting some really serious inflation in the near future. I remember reading this book back in the 80s when we had double-digit inflation in the late 70s and early 80s. And this was a very interesting book back then, and I haven't read it until very recently since then, and I found it fascinating. It's some of the parts of the book are considered by libertarians and free market people to be one of the best books written when explaining free market principles and so on, and the Federal Reserve. But I just remembered for the information it gave about things a purchase could buy using the alpha strategy to help protect themselves from inflation. What the alpha strategy was in the book was basically buying things that you're going to be using a lot and saving them. However, the book, after rereading it, has a lot more information in here than I had remembered. Specifically, the very last chapter, it talks about things that a person could use to help themselves if they're facing a government that no longer um, represents them or their best interests and is out to penalize them financially through inflation and other things. It's a very good book. There's some things in there that I haven't seen other people talk about in other books, even to this day. Now, when Mr. Pugsley wrote this book, he wasn't aware that Volcker was going to come into the scene and raise the interest rates to like 16%. So he kind of helped get rid of inflation for a while. But back then, we were really worried because I think in a 5-year period, the deficit went up to 300 billion. Well, now we have $1 trillion in 3 months. So everything that was in place back in the late 70s and early 80s to scare people about coming inflation is now even 10 times greater, even though in the last 40 years we didn't get the breakdown that was suggested and predicted by the alpha strategy. In fact, if you had taken the suggestions of this advice of this book and not put it in the market and so on, you would have lost a lot of money. But be that as it may, let's go over the book. By the way, this book is absolutely free online. You can find people have put it online in a PDF. Just look for the title of the book, The Alpha Strategy, The Ultimate Plan of Financial Self-Defense by John Pugsley. Just go Alpha Strategy PDF and you'll find a link to it somewhere on the internet. Now, like I said, the first part of the book, it doesn't so much talk about the alpha strategy. It talks about free market principles, causes of inflation, how money is created, Federal Reserve, fractional banking, who caused inflation, then things like regulations, policy, tariffs, laws, and so on. There's some things in this book I didn't agree with at all. I agree with tariffs. And I'm not that a big fan of getting rid of child labor laws. No, not really. No, and I don't think immigration is a panacea. I think there's negatives to it, social, financial, economic, environmental, that create burdens for people in the poor communities, while people who hire immigrants and immigrants themselves, they kind of get some advantages, but not everybody gets advantages. So I think there's reasons for government to have regulations and laws to protect people, but the book lays a case against a lot of these things. So you want to take what is written with a grain of salt and an open mind. But the key of the book, for me, even though a lot of people say the first part, the 70 pages, is going to be about free market. Here's an interesting graph. Federal deficit in billions between 65 and 69 was 36 billion, 70 billion between 70 and 74, and this is what was frightening, 303 billion between 75 and 79. we would cry, we would fall down and cry over such a low inflation or increase in deficit. Now we get, like I said, 1 trillion every 3 months. So something's got to give, something's going to happen. So he goes into really good detail on economy and economic matters, what caused inflation, who caused it, and different things people consider to be investments, which may not be good investments, and why. And eventually, chapter 7, he gets to the alpha strategy. But like I say, a lot of people, they consider the first 7 parts the best part of the book, but I remember reading it because of the information about what I could store in my house and so on that would protect me from inflation. And that's why a lot of people got the book. And let's go to that part. However, the very last chapter, I'd forgotten completely about it. We'll talk about it at the end. It's the most fascinating chapter of the whole book. Um, let's go here. He's not a big fan of the market. But back then they didn't have mutual funds, ETFs. They didn't have Bitcoin. Didn't have a lot of things that they have now. So, but like I said, you would have lost a lot of money by not putting it in the market back then. The solution, the Alpha Strategy, Chapter 7, he starts talking about things to invest in. And right off from the bat, I really like what he talks about. He talks about how you should invest in yourself. He also goes into detail why investing in things is a good idea, because it saves just from tax benefits alone, because when you get a profit from something that bought 10 years ago that now costs 3 times, the amount of money you saved has not taxed at all. So from tax purposes alone. But the very first thing to invest in is in production. Education for yourself, second trade, tools. So this really resonated with me. I really felt simpatico with his beliefs, even though in other parts of the book I didn't. But yeah, that was one of the most important things to do. Also invest in your health, because as you get older, the most expensive things you're going to spend money on is your health. So guard your mental and physical health dearly. Then he gets into what a lot of people probably remember the book from, was consumables. He goes in detail on shelf life of different things, how things are obsolete, and how you may not want to purchase things to barter later because they may be obsolete, and how you want to optimize storage by what something costs, by the amount of space it takes up. So it's not really good to go and invest in toilet paper when you might be better off investing in razor blades. And he goes into food, vitamins, and all sorts of things, wine, spirits, beauty aids, health, cleaning supplies, paper products, clothing, soft goods, automobiles, gasoline, accessories. Now, he does mention about cars, but I think the newer cars, they're all electronics. It'd be a really poor investment because you put it up on blocks. The little command control modules are going to break on you, and there'll be no way to get repairs or replacements. And it's not like the old cars were all mechanical, where you could, if you had a shop, you could make something. Miscellaneous items, sources of supply, how to optimize things. So this is, for a lot of people, was the heart and soul of the book. Although, like I said, a lot of people really went crazy over how well he went into detail on the Federal Reserve and market economy and who's really to blame and so on. So the very last chapter, well, here he's saving real money now. Manufactured goods, collectibles, which he's not that big fan of. Raw commodities, which he likes. He has a lot of things to warn against for precious metals, but he still recommends them. And he's a big fan of industrial metals, because even though they may not go up a lot, they're always going to be whatever they are, and it's hard for them to be lost from being adulterated or counterfeited, so on. He's not a big fan of commodity trading at all, which I think is a feather in his cap. That's not something too bright unless you really know what you're doing. And even then, last chapter, Toward a Theft-Free Future. This is my favorite chapter. I had forgotten completely about it. He talks about how really inflation is just theft, and we're basically all responsible because we all go to the government with our hat in hand wanting something from them, and the government gives it to us, but the government doesn't produce anything. It has to get money from us, so it's just taking from one person and giving to another. and that's how a big problem. But even more importantly, he said, we time after time get mad and upset with the politicians, and we don't get mad at the people behind the politicians. And nobody, I mean nobody, talks about this part. Um, he says the government is not the problem, it's the people behind the government that's the problem. And I remember back in 2010, 2011, we had Occupy Wall Street, and we were having more and more demonstrations against uh, economic inequity and different things in the country that just didn't seem right. And eventually that got shut down, and other things replaced it, which I won't go into. Everybody knows. But the people behind a lot of things in the government, you don't see them. The people who are in the think tanks and in non-government organizations, and even the unelected bureaucrats and judges who are activists. And I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but like I said, you have the politicians and you throw them out, and they get new ones. You're not getting rid of the people who are behind the politicians. And you have an issue. Maybe everybody in the country agrees with you, but certain people that are powerful, they don't agree. So you vote for somebody when they get office, they no longer talk about what they said they were going to do. And that thing that you were interested in, that everybody else is interested in, it never has any action taken. So the people behind the politicians. So he goes into detail about the things that we can do to protect ourselves. It's step one is defend your own wealth. Saving your wealth protects your wealth against the predators and is the first important step in making it profitable for them to continue their actions. The alpha strategy has steps that every individual can take immediately. Step two is to make the plunderers aware that you have caught on to their game. Your time and energy are limited, so don't waste them on any efforts to fight the government or government policies. Remember, government is decoy. Direct all your attention to exposing the real thieves. He said this could be done in many ways. Then he goes on. It says step three, alert your friends and neighbors to the nature of the sting and all of the confidence gains being promoted in this economic carnival. Alert them to the direction from which the attack is coming so that they can begin to defend their wealth and work with you to build the barricades in the right place. So he basically says it's going to be a long struggle, and we all have to resist and help others resist and to make people aware of what's going on. And I thought, even if you don't agree with 90% of his book, you have to agree with a little bit of what he says in the last chapter, that there's something going on. Something's not right. And no matter what we do, no matter who we elect, nothing changes. And we have to make some changes. And he's got some things he recommends. So I had forgotten about this chapter. I've heard no one else talk about this chapter. And I hear almost no one talk about this issue. Everything is always left and right, Democrat, Republican, progressive, conservative. It's always, smoke and mirrors, a diversion from the real issues at hand. So I think this is an excellent book. You can get it for free, and maybe you can start thinking about some things. Maybe you can start saving some things and storing some things away and talking to your friends and neighbors and so on. So guys, that was the video for today. Put on new videos every week. Been doing it for 17 years. Got over 1,400 videos on many different subjects. Got a bunch of different playlists that help out a little bit, because even I forget what I have sometimes. And don't forget, down at the bottom, I have some cool people I feature. No relation to me, they would not anyway. And they always have some good stuff on their channel. Been promoting these people for a long time. They're some real nice people, so you want to check them out. I hope that was helpful to you guys. Take care and see you out there.